Shaun, a woman who stood beside him through it all. The making of a comic genius. Stan Laurel, born Arthur Stanley Jefferson on June 16, 1890, came into the world in the small town of Ulverston, Lancashire, England. His entrance into life happened in his grandparents' home, a place that would later become the center of his early memories. Stan's parents, Arthur J. Jefferson and Margaret Jefferson, were both actors who spent much of their time traveling for stage performances. Because of their careers, they couldn't take care of a young child full-time. As a result, Stan spent most of his early childhood with his maternal grandparents, George and Sarah Metcalf. Stan's grandparents gave him stability, but they also surrounded him with an environment that naturally led him toward the world of performance. He wasn't just another boy growing up in a small English town. He was growing up just across the street from the Hippodrome, a wooden theater where his parents often performed. The Hippodrome wasn't just a building to Stan. It was a magical place. While other children played games in the street, Stan was captivated by the theater's backstage excitement, costumes, and the sound of laughter coming from the audience. His love for stagecraft started there, nurtured by the sights and sounds of live performance. As he grew older, Stan lived for a time with his grandmother Sarah in North Shields, a town in northeast England. He also attended school there. Later, the family moved to Glasgow, Scotland, where his father took over management of the Metropole Theatre. This became another big influence on young Stan. Watching his father manage shows, handle actors, and organize theater productions gave Stan a closer look at how the world of entertainment worked, not just on the stage, but behind the scenes as well. Though he was still just a teenager, Stan began learning everything he could about theater. He was developing a deep love for timing, physical comedy, and making people laugh. This was the foundation of what would later become one of the most famous comedy careers in history. At just 16 years old, Stan took the leap from audience member to performer. His first real stage experience came at Glasgow's Britannia Panopticon, a popular music hall where many future stars got their start. It was here that Stan performed in public for the first time. The experience showed him what it felt like to be on stage in front of a crowd, delivering laughter. He was hooked. In 1910, something major happened that would change the direction of Stan's life forever. He joined the Fred Carnot troupe, one of the most famous British comedy stage companies of the time. He started performing under the stage name Stan Jefferson. The Carnot troupe was a traveling group that specialized in physical comedy and slapstick routines. They performed all over the United Kingdom and beyond. Being a part of this troupe was an enormous opportunity for Stan to improve his comedic skills and learn from the best in the business. But what made this experience even more special was that he wasn't alone. Another rising star was also in the troupe, Charlie Chaplin. The two young performers quickly became friends and, at times, rivals. They pushed each other to get better, and Stan even served as Chaplin's understudy. Watching Chaplin's sharp timing, creative movement, and silent expressions up close was like taking a master class in comedy. It made Stan sharper, more confident, and more inventive. That same year, in 1910, Stan and Charlie both set sail for America with the Fred Carnot troupe. It was the start of something big, not just for Chaplin, who would go on to become the face of silent film comedy, but for Stan as well. While America was still getting used to the world of moving pictures, these two young men were about to help define the future of film comedy. Stan was still finding his voice, still learning who he was on stage, but the journey had begun. The quiet boy from Ulverston, who used to watch plays from across the street, was now stepping into the spotlight on both sides of the Atlantic. Next, we'll see how a few short gigs, a name change, and an early film appearance set Stan Laurel on the path to becoming half of a comedy duo that would never be forgotten. Reinventing himself in America. After Stan Laurel finished touring with Fred Carnot's comedy troupe in America, he made a big decision. He stayed in the United States. The tour had introduced him to new audiences, new ideas, and a fast-growing entertainment world that was just starting to fall in love with the moving pictures. It was the early 1910s, and film was becoming more popular by the day. Stan could see there was something special happening, and he wanted to be a part of it. At first, he focused on live performances. Stan teamed up with 2 other comedians to form the Keystone Trio, a small vaudeville act. The group was loosely named after the famous Keystone Studios, known for its slapstick comedy. The trio performed physical humor and sketch comedy, and though they weren't widely famous, they were successful enough to tour and keep working. Later, Stan rebranded the group into the Stan Jefferson Trio, using his birth name. The name change was simple but important. Stan was stepping up to take the lead in his own career. He wanted to be known not just as part of a team, but as a headlining act. During this time, he worked hard to create his own comedy style. He performed routines that were funny, energetic, and physical. But he also borrowed from someone he knew very well, Charlie Chaplin. Since he had been Chaplin's understudy, Stan had studied Chaplin's body language, expressions, and timing up close. For a while, Stan even performed Chaplin-like routines, trying to copy his style. This helped him get noticed, but he didn't want to be a copy forever. Stan began to adjust his act, adding his own touches of innocence, clumsiness, and childlike reactions. He was slowly developing what would later become the classic Stan Laurel character: gentle, confused, and lovable. In 1917, Stan made an important move into film. His first screen appearance came in a short silent comedy called Nuts in May. It was a small production, but it marked the beginning of his film career. Over the next few years, he appeared in a series of short films, often low budget, but perfect training grounds for learning how to act for the camera instead of the stage. Around this time, Stan made another major change. He changed his stage name from Stan Jefferson to Stan Laurel. According to people close to him, Stan believed Stan Jefferson was unlucky because it had 13 letters. Whether he was truly superstitious or just looking for a catchier name, Stan Laurel became his new identity. The last name Laurel may have been inspired by his partner at the time, May Dahlberg, or by a suggestion from a friend. Either way, it stuck. From that point forward, he would be known as Stan Laurel. Though he wasn't yet famous, Stan was getting better and better. He was acting, writing, and directing small comedies. He was putting in the work, gaining experience, and waiting for the big break that would change everything. A partnership turned painful. While Stan was working hard to build his film career, he was also in a complicated relationship with a woman named May Dahlberg. She was an Australian-born actress older than Stan by about 10 years. They met in 1919 and quickly became close. Though they were never legally married, they lived together and acted like husband and wife. People in Hollywood even began calling her May Laurel, using his stage name as her last name. May played an important role in Stan's early life in the film business. She encouraged him, gave him ideas, and helped shape his performance style. Some even say she helped choose the name Laurel for him. For a while they were a team, both personally and professionally. But over time, the relationship started to fall apart. May had a strong personality and sometimes got involved in Stan's work in ways that caused tension. She was known to be possessive and had a habit of interfering on film sets. Directors and producers didn't like working with her around. Eventually, this became a problem for Stan's career. One of the key people who stepped in was Joe Rock, a film producer who saw real talent in Stan Laurel. Joe believed Stan had a future in comedy films, but he also thought May was holding him back. He wanted Stan to focus on acting, not personal drama. So, in a move that shocked many, Joe offered May a deal. If she agreed to leave Stan and return to Australia, he would pay her a lump sum of money and buy her a ticket home. She agreed. In 1925, she left quietly, and Stan was now free to move forward without her. The breakup allowed Stan to focus completely on his career, but the story didn't end there. In 1937, over a decade later, May returned to the headlines. She came back to the United States and filed a lawsuit against Stan. She claimed that he had promised to support her financially and that she was entitled to ongoing payments. The lawsuit was messy and embarrassing, digging up the past and putting Stan's personal life back in the public eye. Though the case didn't lead to serious legal consequences for Stan, it reminded everyone that his rise to fame wasn't free from painful personal costs. Stan had finally broken away from a toxic relationship, but the scars from it would last for years. He had made it through a difficult chapter, but the next ones would test him even more. The birth of a legendary duo. By 1925, Stan Laurel had built a decent reputation as a comedy actor and writer in Hollywood. He was known for his funny expressions, his gentle charm, and his skill at writing jokes and gags. That year, he was hired by Hal Roach Studios, a busy comedy film studio that was becoming famous for producing short films. Stan didn't join as an actor at first. He was signed on as a writer and director. His job was to help shape other comedians' performances and come up with ideas for short comedy films. While working behind the camera, Stan sometimes missed being in front of it, but he continued to focus on writing and directing, quietly waiting for the right chance to perform again. That chance came in the most unexpected way, through an accident. At the same studio, another actor named Oliver Hardy was also working. Hardy, often called Babe by his friends, was a big man with a warm smile and a strong presence on screen. He was acting in several short comedies at the time. One day in 1926, Hardy had a serious kitchen accident. While cooking at home, he burned his arm badly with hot grease. Because of the injury, he couldn't act for a while and had to take time off to heal. That's when the studio asked Stan Laurel to step in and take his place in a film. Stan agreed, and what happened next changed comedy history forever. When Stan and Oliver appeared together, something clicked. Their on-screen chemistry was immediate and natural. Stan played the clumsy, wide-eyed, innocent type, while Oliver played the more serious, frustrated, and bossy partner. Their characters were completely different, but they balanced each other perfectly. Audiences noticed it right away. Hal Roach and his team saw the magic too. They decided to pair the two men together more often. At first, the studio didn't call them a duo officially, but by 1927, that changed. That year, Stan and Ollie acted together in several short films like Duck Soup, Slipping Wives, and With Love and Hisses. In 1929, they took on a new challenge: sound films. Up until then, all movies had been silent, but with new technology, films were now being made with sound. Some silent film stars struggled with this change, but not Laurel and Hardy. The first talkie was a short film called Unaccustomed as We Are. Their voices matched their characters so well. Stan's high-pitched, gentle voice and Ollie's deep, calm tone made the contrast even funnier. They adjusted to sound films quickly, and their popularity grew even more. By the mid-1930s, Laurel and Hardy were comedy legends. Their names were known all over the world. They had gone from an accidental pairing to becoming one of the most famous comedy duos in film history. Cracks beneath the surface. By the late 1930s, Laurel and Hardy were still hugely popular. But behind the scenes, their working relationship with the Hal Roach Studios was falling apart. One of the biggest problems was something most fans never knew. Laurel and Hardy had separate contracts with the studio. This meant that when one actor's contract ended, the other could still be legally tied to the studio. Stan Laurel, who had always been more involved in the creative side of their work, was unhappy about this arrangement. He felt the setup gave the studio too much control and didn't treat the team as one united act. In 1939, Laurel's contract ended, but Hardy's didn't. So instead of renegotiating or waiting for Laurel, Hal Roach made a move that shocked fans and insiders alike. He tried to replace Stan Laurel. Roach paired Oliver Hardy with comedian Harry Langdon in a movie called Zenobia. Although Langdon was a skilled performer in his own right, the film failed to impress. Audiences didn't respond well, and it became clear that there was no true replacement for Stan Laurel. Meanwhile, Laurel was furious. He didn't just feel betrayed. He believed the studio was trying to split up one of the most beloved comedy duos in film history. In response, Laurel sued Hal Roach, arguing over contract issues and creative rights. The legal battle lasted several months and caused even more tension. Eventually, the lawsuit was dropped, and Laurel returned to the studio. He and Hardy were reunited on screen, but the damage had already been done. The trust between Laurel and Hal Roach was broken, and the working environment was no longer the same. Even though Laurel and Hardy were back together, their relationship with the studio would never fully recover. In 1941, after years of ups and downs, Laurel and Hardy finally decided to walk away from Hal Roach Studios for good. It was the end of an era. The place where their famous partnership had begun was now in the past, and the future was uncertain. Still, the team stayed together and hoped to find a better path forward. After leaving Roach Studios, Laurel and Hardy signed a new deal with 20th Century Fox and Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. Under this agreement, they were set to make 10 films over 5 years. It sounded like a great opportunity. Working with major studios meant better budgets and more exposure. But there was a catch. At Fox and MGM, Laurel and Hardy were hired strictly as actors. They were not allowed to write their own material, direct scenes, or make changes to the scripts. This was especially frustrating for Stan Laurel, who had always been the creative heart of the team. From the beginning of their partnership, he had written many of their gags, shaped their routines, and helped with the editing. Now, all of that control was gone. Studios handed them ready-made scripts and asked them to simply act out the scenes. As a result, some of their films during this period didn't have the same spark or magic as their earlier work. The humor sometimes felt forced, and the characters weren't as carefully crafted. Still, because Laurel and Hardy were so naturally funny and loved by fans, the films were successful at the box office. Over time, Laurel started pushing back. He didn't want to be just an actor, reading lines. He wanted to bring their old creativity and style back. Slowly, the studios gave him a bit more room to contribute ideas. He would suggest changes, rewrite parts of the script, and work closely with directors to shape the performances. It wasn't the full control he had at Roach Studios, but it was better than nothing. Even with those small wins, Laurel remained deeply frustrated. He often felt that the studio executives didn't understand their brand of comedy. The jokes didn't always match their timing or personalities. Instead of being crafted around their unique chemistry, many of the scenes felt generic. Laurel was proud of the legacy they had built, and he worried that these new films were pulling them away from what made them special. The death of Baby Stanley. While Stan Laurel made millions laugh on the screen, very few people knew about the deep sadness he carried in his personal life. One of the greatest tragedies he ever faced happened in 1930. At the time, he was married to his first wife, Lois Nielsen, an actress he had met while working in silent films. Their relationship had its ups and downs, but they shared a quiet joy when Lois became pregnant with their second child. In May of 1930, Lois gave birth to a baby boy named Stanley Robert Laurel. Unfortunately, the baby was born prematurely. Medical care in those days was not as advanced as it is today, especially for premature infants. The child struggled to survive, and Stan and Lois spent those early days in fear and hope. But only 9 days after his birth, baby Stanley passed away. This loss devastated Laurel. He rarely spoke about it publicly, and even close friends said he almost never brought it up. But his grief ran deep. Despite his bright smile and funny roles, he was a father mourning a son who never got to grow up. Many believed this heartbreak never fully left him. He simply carried it quietly for the rest of his life. In interviews and letters later on, there were rare hints of this pain, but he chose to keep his sorrow private, never allowing it to affect the joy he gave to audiences. The marriage of the child. Stan Laurel's personal life was not just marked by tragedy. It was also filled with chaos, especially when it came to his marriages. His relationships were stormy, complicated, and often played out in the public eye. After years of strain, Laurel divorced Lois Nielsen in 1934. Though they had shared important life moments, including the birth of their 2 children, the marriage had run its course. Laurel didn't stay single for long. In 1935, he married Virginia Ruth Rogers, a woman who would become a central figure in one of the most confusing chapters of his love life. Stan and Virginia had a difficult relationship from the start. They divorced not long after getting married, but instead of moving on, they remarried, only to divorce again. It was a cycle of passion and problems, and it left both of them hurt and exhausted. The press followed their back-and-forth relationship with interest, and fans were often confused about what was really happening behind the scenes. In 1938, Laurel married for a 3rd time. His new wife was Ilyana Shuvalova, a Russian singer and actress. This marriage turned out to be even more chaotic than the last. Ilyana made several shocking claims during their time together. One of the most bizarre was that Laurel had tried to bury her alive, a serious accusation that made headlines. Laurel denied the charges, but the drama surrounding their relationship was impossible to ignore. Friends and co-workers were worried, and eventually, the marriage ended in divorce. Through all of this, Laurel kept working. He continued to appear in films with Oliver Hardy, trying to stay focused on their comedy. But privately, his emotional life was in constant turmoil. He was known to drink heavily during these stressful times, and those closest to him said he often felt lost and tired. Finally, in 1946, Stan Laurel found some peace. He married Ida Kitaeva-Raphael, a Russian-born opera singer. This marriage, unlike the ones before, brought stability and comfort. Ida stood by him through the later years of his life, especially when his health began to decline. There were no public scandals, no courtroom battles, and no messy separations. It was a quiet, caring relationship, and the two remained married until Laurel's death in 1965. Ida protected Laurel's privacy and helped him step away from the spotlight when his career slowed down. She became his emotional support, someone he could finally rely on after years of personal chaos. Friends said she brought him a sense of calm that he had never truly experienced before. The death of Oliver Hardy. By the mid-1950s, time had taken its toll on Oliver Hardy. Once the jolly, round-faced half of the world's most famous comedy duo, his health began to fail. Hardy, affectionately known by his nickname Babe, had always been a heavy man, and in later years, he developed serious health issues. After suffering a mild heart attack in 1954, his condition began to worsen. He was later hit with a series of strokes that affected both his ability to speak and move. By 1956, he was almost unrecognizable, having lost over 150 pounds due to illness. On August 7, 1957, Oliver Hardy passed away from complications caused by a massive stroke. He was 65 years old. His death marked the end of a legendary career and a treasured friendship that had lasted more than 3 decades. The world mourned the loss of a man who had brought so much laughter to so many people. But no one felt the loss more deeply than Stan Laurel. Laurel and Hardy were more than just partners on screen. They were true friends off-screen as well. They shared a bond that went beyond work, built on trust, mutual respect, and shared history. When Hardy died, Laurel was completely heartbroken. He was also too ill to attend the funeral. He had been suffering from his own health problems, including strokes and other complications, and simply wasn't physically strong enough to travel or face the emotional strain of the ceremony. Still, Laurel's absence from the funeral made headlines. When asked why he wasn't there, Laurel simply said, "Babe would understand." That one short sentence said everything. He didn't need to explain his grief any further. Those who knew him and knew how much he loved Hardy understood how deeply he was hurting. After Hardy's death, Stan Laurel made a personal decision that surprised many. He turned down all offers to return to show business. Hollywood was eager to feature him again, even in small roles or tributes, but Laurel always said no. He refused to perform without Hardy. To him, their act had been a partnership, and without Babe, it simply didn't feel right. He quietly moved into a modest apartment in Santa Monica, California, at the Oceana Apartments, just a short walk from the beach. This was where he would spend the rest of his life, not as a movie star, but as a quiet man with a legendary past. Heartbreaking final years. Despite his fame, Laurel lived simply. His apartment was small and comfortable, without any signs of wealth or glamour. He didn't hire assistants or live behind locked gates. In fact, he listed his phone number in the public directory, making it easy for anyone to call him. And many people did. Fans from all over the world would dial his number, not expecting to reach him directly. But they were often surprised to hear his gentle voice on the other end. He took the time to talk to them, thank them, and even write back to those who sent letters. In 1961, he was honored in a major way. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences awarded him an honorary Oscar for his contributions to the world of comedy. It was a way of recognizing not just his individual talent, but the joy and innovation he had brought to film alongside Oliver Hardy. During his final years, Laurel's health continued to decline. He suffered several strokes, which made it hard for him to move and speak clearly. But even with his growing physical challenges, he remained mentally sharp and continued corresponding with fans until the very end. On February the 23rd, 1960, Stan Laurel passed away peacefully. He died while sitting in his armchair in the same quiet apartment where he had lived for so many years. He was 74 years old. His death marked the true end of an era, the final chapter of a comedy team that had once been the most beloved in the world. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss more amazing stories from Hollywood's golden age.